So let's work on this create a consumer hook extra credit. So I described the problem here, but let me just show you this problem. What would happen if I came down here and I said, oh, we don't want to have that count provider, or maybe we didn't wrap everything inside the count provider, and now I get an explosion of a white screen. Now you probably should have an error boundary in here, but let's just say we don't, and we've got undefined is not iterable. This is not awesome. Even if we had an error boundary, this would not be a very helpful error message. And then we can click on this and we'll see, oh, that's what's going on. We're trying to use react.useContext with account context, and then we're trying to destructure that. But what's happening here is our counter trying to consume that is not wrapped within the count provider. So therefore, when we say use context, we're getting back undefined. We're trying to destructure that. So we could solve this by saying, oh, okay, well, I'll have 0 as my default count and a no-op function is my default set count. And now if I click on increment count, it's not incrementing, but at least I don't get a white wall of death. And that's also not great. I would much rather have the error that happens early, but an error message that's a lot more useful. So maybe something like this, where we say, here's my context, and then we'll take this and say context. And I can say if there's not a context, then I can throw a new error that says counter must be rendered within the count provider. We'll save that, and then we get kablooey, but at least the error message that we get in here is a lot more descriptive. It tells us what we need to do to fix the problem. But I don't know about you, I do not want to do this in every one of my components where I'm using this use context hook. So what do? Anytime we have some code that we want to have elsewhere in our application, we make a function out of it. So I'm going to do that right here. We'll make a function called useCount. And here we'll just paste that code in here. And instead of counter, we'll just say useCount must be used within the count provider. Okay. And then we can return the context. And then now we'll just call useCount. And we can do the same thing for this one, useCount. And now we don't have to worry about the context value at all. We still get that really nice error message that tells us exactly what we're supposed to do. And thanks to React, it'll tell us exactly which component this is happening in, which is quite nice as well. And then we can fix this by just moving that back into the count provider, and boom, everything's working just fine. And then we can take all of this stuff, put it into a separate module somewhere, and import the count provider and use count hook from our context count context file or whatever, and that can all be in that separate file so that we just use the count and use the count provider, and we don't have to worry about the context at all. That context value is an implementation detail of this component and this hook. So let's put all that back here and give you a quick review of what we've done here. So before, this was React use context, and we passed this count context here. And now we want to validate that the context value exists, and otherwise we'll throw a useful error message so people know what they need to do to fix the problem. And that simplifies the consumers, and the provider simplifies the providing component as well. And this is typically how I'm going to use context for most situations.